I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment, the city lights stretching endlessly before me. My silk blouse clung lightly to my skin as I sipped a lukewarm latte, watching the rain streak the glass. It was almost peaceful, almost normal. Except it wasn't. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop. A message flashed. Court judgment finalized. Call me ASAP, Dad. I froze. My heart did that weird, lurching thing you only feel when the past comes crashing back. My brother, Ryan, had made a mess I thought was buried for good. But apparently, the court had just decided on something monumental. I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation, like the world was about to tip on its axis. I leaned back, feeling the soft cushion against my shoulders, and thought about all the times I had brushed off his lies, the stolen trust, the quiet rage that I'd tucked behind polite smiles at family dinners. And now, the universe seemed to demand reckoning. The truth? I'd been living this carefully curated life of success and calm, hiding every scar he ever caused. But maybe it was time he saw the real me. The strong, unbroken, quietly thriving Sophia. My thumb hovered over the call button. One ring, and everything from the past would collide with the present. I remember the day everything changed, like it's etched in my bones. I was 22, fresh out of college, full of dreams and trust. Ryan, my older brother by 3 years, walked into my small apartment with that easy smile that had once made me feel safe. Only that day, it felt like a mask. "Hey, Sophia," he said, slumping onto my couch, his hands twisting nervously. I need your help with something." I thought he meant a favor, a small loan, maybe a cosign on a tiny car. I didn't know he had already gone behind my back, signing a $250,000 loan in my name, a shadow looming over my future that I couldn't even see yet. I noticed it before he said anything. The way his voice faltered, the guilty tension in his eyes, the way he avoided mine. My chest tightened, my throat burned. I wanted to ask, "What did you do?" But my voice caught, raw and fragile. When the truth came out, it hit like a punch I hadn't been ready for. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the letter from the bank. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal didn't just sting, it seared. Ryan had taken my name, my credit, my trust, as if it were nothing. That night, I sat alone in my cramped kitchen, staring at the chipped mug my grandmother had given me years ago, her words echoing in my mind. "Sophia, strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising, even when they try to push you down." I traced the rim of the mug, clinging to her wisdom like a lifeline. I knew then that I couldn't rely on anyone to fix what he'd broken. I couldn't beg, plead, or reason with Ryan. The only way out was to stand on my own 2 feet. I packed my belongings into the smallest suitcase I could manage, leaving behind the apartment that felt too small for my shattered trust. That night, I promised myself something quietly, fiercely. I would never let anyone hold my life hostage again. And somehow, deep down, I knew this betrayal would eventually teach me the one lesson no one could take away. Power comes from resilience, not bloodlines. I didn't have much when I left, just a small suitcase, my grandmother's mug, and a stubborn determination that wouldn't quit. I found a tiny studio apartment in the city, the kind with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, and decided it was enough. Somehow, it had to be. My first job was at a modest marketing firm, an internship that barely paid enough for rent. I remember the long nights, sitting at my desk, eyes stinging from staring at the computer screen, coffee cups piling up around me. I learned everything the hard way. Budgets, client negotiations, pitching ideas that sometimes got shot down. But I refused to let self-doubt win. Every small success felt monumental. Landing a client willing to pay, seeing my first campaign succeed, hearing a colleague say, "Hey, that was your idea, right?" It was during one of these nights that I met Claire Donovan, a seasoned marketing executive who saw something in me I hadn't yet recognized in myself. She took me under her wing, teaching me the nuances of strategy, persuasion, and confidence. "Sophia," she said once, leaning against the office doorway, "don't ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. You set the bar, not them." Her words became a mantra, echoing in my head whenever I felt small. Slowly, painstakingly, I started climbing. I picked up freelance clients on the side, reinvesting every penny I earned into learning more, growing faster, proving to myself that independence wasn't just a dream, it was achievable. Some nights, I cried in exhaustion, wondering if it was all worth it, but the thought of Ryan and what he'd done kept me pushing. I wanted to create a life so solid, so undeniable, that no one could ever undermine me again. By the time I was 28, I had quietly built a small marketing consultancy of my own. My apartment was modest, but my clients were high-profile, and my reputation was growing. I avoided showing off, even to my family. I posted carefully curated updates on social media, enough to appear successful, but never enough to reveal the full scale of my achievements. It was my secret power, quietly growing while they assumed I was still struggling. I took pride in my discipline. Morning runs through the park, late-night brainstorming sessions, learning finance, networking strategically. Each milestone, each client, each small triumph was a brick in the foundation of the life I was building. One day, I imagined Ryan seeing me now, strong, independent, untouchable, and the thought made a small, satisfied smile curve my lips. And yet, even as I built my empire quietly, I knew the day of reckoning was coming. I didn't need to seek revenge, but I needed justice, balance, closure. And when that day came, I would be ready, unshakable, poised, and finally free from the shadow of his betrayal. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, though nothing could truly prepare me for the weight of it. When Ryan called that morning, asking to come by and talk, I felt the familiar pulse of anticipation and controlled calm. My apartment, sleek and tastefully decorated, reflected a life I had built from scratch. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, abstract art from local artists adorned the walls, and the faint scent of vanilla and sandalwood lingered in the air. Everything whispered, "Sophia Reynolds is not to be underestimated." When they arrived, I led them into the living room with a steady, measured smile. Ryan froze at the doorway, the guilt in his eyes almost palpable. Behind him, my parents hesitated, their expressions caught somewhere between concern and curiosity. I offered coffee, gesturing toward the seating area, and watched as they took in the apartment. The plush yet understated furniture, the bookshelves stacked with awards and business volumes, the subtle touches of a life meticulously crafted. I let them look. I let the silence stretch, heavy with tension. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm, clear and unwavering. "Ryan," I began, "do you remember the $250,000 loan you took out in my name?" He swallowed hard, his eyes flicking to my parents. Soft. I. "Let me finish," I said, holding up a hand. "That loan is no longer your concern. The court ruled, as you know. But before you assume this is just about money, it's about accountability, about consequences. And I want you to understand exactly what that looks like." I watched his face pale as I laid out the facts, how the judgment had been executed, how his house, yes, the house he'd thought was untouchable, was now under lien, effectively ensuring that the debt he had forced on me was repaid. The room was silent except for the soft ticking of a wall clock. And then I turned the lens on myself. Meanwhile, I continued, allowing a small, controlled smile. "I've spent the past few years building a consultancy that now serves Fortune 500 clients. I am financially independent. I own my own home, investments, and my company. Everything you tried to control, I turned into strength. And I did it without anyone else's help." My parents' mouths fell open. Ryan's face twisted into disbelief, then guilt, then the barest hint of awe. I let it sink in. Let them feel the weight of their assumptions crashing against reality. For a moment, I didn't need to say more. Their silence said it all: shock, shame, regret. And yet, I felt no gloating satisfaction, only a quiet, unshakable power. This wasn't revenge. This was balance, the natural outcome of actions and consequences. "Everything you see here," I added softly, glancing around at the apartment that was now mine in every sense, is the result of resilience, determination, and refusing to let someone else dictate my life. Ryan, this is the moment you realize that your choices have consequences. And the rest of you, I smiled gently at my parents. This is the moment you see that I am exactly who I was always meant to be. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control. I had turned betrayal into empowerment, pain into progress, and suspicion into undeniable truth. And in that room, filled with stunned silence and unspoken recognition, I understood something profound. I didn't need to hurt anyone to prove myself. I just needed to show up as who I truly was. The room was thick with tension, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I had the upper hand now, not in anger, but in clarity and control. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward me as if searching for a trace of the sister he used to manipulate. Ryan, I began, my voice steady but not unkind. This isn't just about the loan. It's about accountability. You made a choice that put me in jeopardy, and now you're facing the consequences. Your house is part of that, something tangible you can't ignore. I paused, letting the words settle. He swallowed hard. I didn't think. I know, I interrupted softly. And that's the problem. Thinking without considering the impact of your actions doesn't absolve responsibility. I leaned back, my gaze calm but firm. If you want to move forward, there are conditions. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. Ryan's brow furrowed. My parents watched silently, sensing the shift in power. First, I said, you will attend financial counseling and work with a professional to learn accountability. Mistakes are part of life, but repeating them isn't acceptable. Second, I continued, you must acknowledge the harm you caused me, honestly, without excuses. Apologies only matter when they come from understanding, not fear. Third, I added, if you want a future where I can trust you again, you need to make something of yourself, honestly, with integrity. No shortcuts, no using others to clean up your messes. You have the skills, Ryan. It's time to use them responsibly. I looked at my parents. And for you, Mom and Dad, I ask for honest reflection. I am not punishing you. I'm asking that you stop enabling behaviors that hurt family bonds. Learn to support without shielding harmful patterns. There was a silence, so heavy it could have filled the room, but I held their gaze calmly. I didn't need them to like it, I needed them to understand. Compassion doesn't mean surrendering your boundaries. Finally, I added, I care about all of you, but I will not allow the past to repeat itself. These conditions aren't punishments, they are opportunities to grow, to heal, to repair what's been broken. The choice to embrace them is yours. Ryan's shoulders sagged, a mix of guilt and reluctant acceptance. My parents exchanged glances, their pride mingled with understanding that change had to come from this moment onward. For the first time, I felt the full weight of my power, not as vengeance, but as sovereignty over my own life. I wasn't a victim of circumstances, and I wasn't a pawn in their mistakes. I was Sophia Reynolds, and I had set the rules for my world. I finished with a small, quiet smile, the kind that carried both authority and warmth. This was no longer about anger or betrayal. It was about justice tempered with compassion, and the knowledge that I was finally free to move forward on my own terms. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and I watched quietly as changes began to unfold. Ryan, humbled by the consequences, started taking financial counseling seriously. I saw him at work, sitting through sessions, learning responsibility in a way he had never understood before. He didn't look proud. He looked aware, and awareness was the first step toward growth. My parents, too, were evolving. I noticed it in small ways. Dad calling to ask for advice instead of giving it, Mom pausing before jumping in to fix a problem, finally allowing her children to stand on their own. They were learning boundaries, the same lessons I had fought to understand for years. And me? I finally allowed myself a deep, unguarded exhale. I reflected on the path that had brought me here, the betrayal that had felt like the end of the world, the nights of doubt and exhaustion, the victories no one saw. Each hardship had been a stepping stone, each tear a teacher. I touched the chipped mug from my grandmother, now sitting proudly on my desk, and whispered a quiet thanks. Her words had guided me through every storm. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising, even when they try to push you down. I realized that true power wasn't in revenge, nor in proving someone wrong. It was in surviving, thriving, and transforming pain into purpose. I had claimed my independence, my success, and my self-respect. The past no longer had a hold on me, and my family, in their own way, had begun to heal. One evening, as I looked out over the city from my apartment, I felt a quiet satisfaction, a serenity born of knowing I had done what I needed to do. I had honored myself, enforced boundaries, and inspired growth, not through anger, but through courage and clarity. And in that moment, I understood something simple yet profound. I was no longer defined by someone else's mistakes. I was Sophia Reynolds, strong, unshakable, and unapologetically free. Some things you cannot control, I whispered, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, but you can always control the life you build in their shadow.